Hello, my name is Rob Garner. I'm a computer programming instructor, and today I'm going to demonstrate how to use session state to store state in a web form application. So Page has an HTTP session state object called session that you can use to keep track of data. And basically what it is it's a dictionary object, and you can store key value pairs in it. In order for this session state to work, it needs a way to keep track of which session or which person it's working with. And the way it does that is through a number of different options. It can use cookies, which is the default method. It can use URI, device profile, or auto detect. So using cookies is the default method. You can change this in your system.web portion of your web config. And the current client is identified in a temporary cookie called ASP.NET_session ID. Another approach is to actually store the session in the URL. It's not as nice as using cookies, but if cookies are disabled on a browser, then this one will work. And you can set it up so it'll use device profile. What happens is basically .NET looks at the capabilities of the browser. If it supports cookies, it uses cookies. If it cannot, or if it cannot, then it will use URI. However, note that this method does not detect if the user turned off cookies. The auto detect setting, basically what it does, it sends a cookie to the client. If a cookie is returned, then it uses cookies. If not, then it will use the URI. By default, session information is just stored in memory on the server. If your application is running a server farm, however, and you basically have, your request could go to any of a number of servers, then you need to set using a state. You have to set state server or SQL Server mode or state server mode, or you need to use a custom state provider. The Professional C# 5.0 and .NET 4.5 by book will have information on how to do that if you need to do that. So let's look at using session state. And what we're going to do is create a new web application. And I'm going to call it session demo and store it on my desktop. And we're going to pick an empty web form application. And I'm going to add a new web form. I'll call this session demo form.aspx. and drag in a label, a text box, and a button. So there I have my label, my text box, and my button. And I want to add a click event to this button. I could either double click on it here. I can also go to properties, select the lightning bolt, and double click here. And a third method is just type in on click. And let it create it that way. The click event ends up inside of your code behind page. And we're going to use this to store session state. And session is already provided for you. It's a dictionary, so the way you set it is you provided a key inside of the square braces, and we'll just take whatever's in text box 1 and store it in this state. In the page load, what I'm going to do is set create an object that's going to point to session and use that same key. We'll check to make sure it's not null, because initially this won't be set, and the result of this will be a null value, and we don't want it to do anything. If it does get an object back, then we will use the toString method to display it. And we'll put in some text here. We click the button a couple times, and we see that some text works. So why didn't it happen the first click? Well, when we first clicked it, we had the first post back that went to the page and went back to the server. The server built the page, and then it ran the click event, which stored the value into session state. On that initial post back, you don't see the value because it's been set in the session state, but it hasn't actually been rendered yet. Then we clicked the button a second time, and we saw it. I'm going to run again. And you can see that we're still in the same session. Some text showed up again. If I close that, hit run again, again, we see that the session state is stored. First time I click it, doesn't change it. Click it again. Now it's filling in the page. Click it again. Finally, I get this value show up. So it's important to understand the order in which events are run when you're doing web form applications. No matter what you're clicking on, the page load event will always run first, and then this event will run to build it. So that can create some of that odd behavior. We could fix that by doing something like this. You could set that label box in the button click event, and then when you did this, it would update immediately and also store it in session state. So let's see, where is this stored then? So if I view page source, actually, if I hit F12 and get the developer tools open, and let's look at we'll look at resources and then look at cookies and localhost. You can see there's your session ID being stored. And the information in here is not stored in the cookies. The cookie is used to access information on the server to display our information here. If we open up the web config under system.web, we can change the default behavior of the session state. We're going to want to clear our browsing data, and we're going to clear the cookies. if I now run this, I should get all new information. Oh, we need to run something that's viewable. And we can see that when we cleared the browsing data, now it doesn't have that cookie set anymore. And let's and notice that there's some information in here. This information in parentheses is now being used to store our session state instead of storing it in a cookie. And you can see it makes the URL not look as clean as it would be if we had been still using cookies. So normally state is saved on the server. If your application is going to run on a server farm, you can't guarantee that each subsequent request is going to go back to the same server. In that case, you're going to have to use a state server. And what the state server will do will cause the session data to be stored in a state service that is installed on every system running ASP.NET. And in order to do that, what we will do is we'll go to the web config. We will, under system web and session state, we're going to change this up. Set mode equal to state server. Once we've set up our web config entries, then we need to enable the session state service. We're going to do this on our dev machine, but this would have to be done in our server. And we're going to find the ASP.NET state service and start it. And we'll test the application again. So I had to make some modifications. This was not formatted right. I had to remove some spaces. But once you get it formatted correctly, it should work. And we're going to F12 this so we can And we can see that the session ID is being stored in a cookie associated with right here. Instead of being stored on a particular server, however, or instead of being stored on the server that is serving up the web page, when you're using this mode, when you're using the estate server, the data for this for the session state dictionary is actually stored on the state server rather than the server that's offering up the web page. And that work is particularly important if you're using a server farm. So that concludes my demo of how you can use session state. Thank you.